Okay, so welcome to the podcast, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And for listeners who may not know you, who are you? What do you like to be known for?
Okay, so my name is Stephanie Gasche. Or also short Steffi. I'm an Agile coach from Austria. I work mostly in Austria, but not only, especially with internationally distributed teams nowadays. What do I want to be known for? Making an impact in any way I can. Huh? Positively, hopefully.
Yeah. No, I just want to be remembered.
That's
so
me.
you're mostly making your impact through different types of coaching, then? Sort of?
So when you ask me what do I want to be known for, I'm not only talking about my professional life of Agile coaching, just making an impact generally on people's lives, on systems, on how we go about in this world. Small scale and large scale. And if I can do this by, if I can earn money through doing that, then that's the best thing that could possibly happen to me. Yeah.
So that's really interesting, because making an impact, it's... what way did it take to realize that the importance of making an impact? Sort of, is it something that you've been thinking actively about?
I think this is something that I've been thinking actively about for probably most of my life without noticing it. And I think I noticed it most probably 2015 or just before that. I don't know how to say that. I kind of fell or rolled into the Agile world in 2012. And was working as a Scrum management or as a management consultant in the Agile world, let's say that. And I was traveling around a lot and learning an incredible amount. You know how it is working with people. It's never, knowledge never ends.
Yeah, exactly.
And learning never ends. But I was traveling around a lot, and I realized I was more or less giving myself up in order to help businesses get a little bit more profit. Of course, you've got the very nice side effect in Agile of making employees happier, making customers happier, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But I was doing everything for other people, but not for myself. And at the same time, the big impact, as a consultant, as a coach, you're always on the outside, and you always jump into a project or into a company or whatever. And you rarely actually see the large impact that you brought. You have, of course, you got a gut feeling or you get some feedback from people, but you don't see the long-term thing.
No, what happened in 2 years?
Exactly. So in the end, I don't know if I can call it a burnout, but I was exhausted. At some point, I was just really, I wasn't sure why I was doing this anymore. I didn't see a purpose in that anymore, because I couldn't see the impact of all my energy that I was giving anymore. So that was probably 2015 when I realized, okay, I need to change what I'm doing, and I need to change it so that I see more of a purpose in it, and the purpose I find by seeing that I have an impact. Positive one. Yeah. So probably 2015. It's the short answer.
And then you started. Did you know at that point how you wanted to change?
No.
Was it a long discovery process?
Well, I thought I was going to write a book. So my book was going to be. 2015, I decided I'm going to take some time off, about a half a year or however long I need. In order to, again, regain the energy. And as I'm somebody who can never sit still, I decided, in order to regain the energy, I need to travel around the world. I need to do this, and also I need to write a book. But no, I'm not going to write another Agile book because there's too many on the market already. No, I'm going to write a book on hitchhiking and how hitchhiking can change the course of the world. Because people, people who are normally not going to meet in a very intimate space. And there's a certain dependency that suddenly they get pushed into. And it's super challenging on a personal level and on, so many levels. Yeah. And so it kind of changes the way you think. It changes the way you collaborate with people. It changes the way you can deal with change really. So it has an enormous impact in my opinion. If people would hitchhike more, and I find it very interesting if you look at cultures that hitchhike a lot versus cultures where hitchhiking is illegal.
Oh, there's that span even. I have no idea.
Yeah, and also the cultures that hitchhike a lot. There's even cultures that hitchhike all the time, but they would never call it hitchhiking because they're not aware of that concept because it's so normal for them.
Interesting. Where in the world is that?
So, for example, most of the Near East, so Middle East. So we're talking most of the Arabic world. You know, it's kind of people just drive along and then they honk and people can get on. Or if you're living really far in the countryside, people you just take people who you see in the street because you feel sorry for them. It's like, come on, where there's not a regular bus route or something. So anyway, that was what I was supposed to do. That's how I thought. Okay, through a book like that, I could make an impact because I used to hitchhike a lot. I don't anymore simply for time reasons. But if I do get the chance, the obvious, I'm going hiking, leaving the car somewhere, and then I need to get back to the car, I always use hitchhiking. So that still happens. But back in the days, it used to be like hitchhike from London down to Morocco, or hitchhiking from Amsterdam to Milan, or things like that. So really my travels being hitchhiking.
Yeah, wow.
So different path.
Very much. So that's what you thought you were going to do at that point.
That's what I thought I was going to do.
And then what happened?
Well, 2015 happened. Let's say many people who had to flee their country came to Europe.
Oh yeah. That was the time.
That was the time. That was 2015. I'll never forget that year. I mean, obviously it was from 2014 and onwards until 2016, which was, let's say, the strongest years in terms of the refugee movement. But it was 2015 that really where it hit me the most personally, because as I said beforehand, I was just traveling a lot, and of course you read the news and everything, but you're so caught up in the business world that yes, these are things are happening, but you notice it. Whereas when you stop the business traveling and the business world, let's say that. Or step out of it for a second, then you realize what's happening in your home country and in your hometown, which for me is Vienna. And between 2015 and 2016, over 150,000 people came to Austria and asked for asylum, asked to be granted asylum. And I mean, if you think about it, that's really not a lot of people. But at the same time, if you compare it to a country of 8.7 million. Or Vienna being a city of 1.9 or 8 million at the moment, that's a lot. That's even more than Sweden. Like, we had a higher per capita refugee
ratio
than Sweden, which is, let's just say it was a new situation. And that couldn't go unnoticed.
No.
So that's what happened in 2015. And that's where I realized maybe I have to do, maybe the impact that I can make with a book like that, with a book on hitchhiking, that's nice. But if I do that today or if I do that in 10 years, nobody cares. It doesn't matter, really.
It's not time sensitive.
It's not time sensitive. Whereas this situation here, it is a situation. If it's a bad situation or a good situation, I don't actually care. It is a situation. The situation needs to be dealt with. And it wasn't. There were very few people who were dealing. Sorry, there were a lot of people who were dealing with it, but not the government wasn't at this point, because they were still, wondering and debating on what to do. Because any movement they would make a statement. So they were, living in a democratic country, which is a good thing. But still, democracy means it's a bit slower in terms of decision making. That's fine, but in a situation like that, So I figured I could make a positive impact with everything that I had learned from the 3-something years before that in the Agile world.
So you started this. I guess this is what leads up to one of your talks today, right?
Yes, it does.
So how did it start? Where did you start?
So what happened in the end? What happened is that in 2015, not writing the book in the end, well, I did go traveling a little bit. not as much as I'd wanted or I'd expected to. And then so what I did was analyze the situation. So actually have a look at what's going on, what's happening, trying to understand, getting a grasp on, what is going on. Yeah. So the way I did that is to become a volunteer in a few of the refugee asylum quarters. And that was a catastrophe. What I saw was, I think any Agile coach or anyone living, working in the Agile world would have just, turned my stomach around. It was just, it was really bad leadership, which was really sad. And so I tried out a few, I had a look at a few asylum camps, seeing where it works better and where it doesn't work. And most of the things that I noticed were just not working well, because we used what we know for a situation that had never happened before. Yeah. So I figured, okay, well, I think I can actually help. Most Agile coaches, most people living in an Agile world would have been able to do that, but we're still a minority. And most people like me, a few months beforehand, were caught up in our normal business lives. So anyway, so I decided I need to make an impact, but I can't make an impact if I'm working as a volunteer a few hours a week for some kind of organization. Yeah. I need to do this from full time from the inside. So I need to be part of it. So I got offered the opportunity to become the first trainer for so-called value and orientation courses. So I started working for the government. They had an official job opening, which I grasped. And so what I did then afterwards for 2.5 years actually was to travel all across the country and teach refugees, mostly refugees, about the Austrian value system and how they can orientate themselves in Austria. Super interesting. Lots of, let's say, interesting press. Seeing as I can imagine. Seeing as I was the first trainer that they hired. I was the media face of the whole thing, which was not really a nice situation to be in, because the refugee crisis, same in Sweden, it divided the country into two poles, into two opinions. And anyway, I was in the middle of it because I was just trying to do my job. And I'm a big believer in those courses. I think they're fantastic. They're nothing else but, let's say, 8 hours of teaching people who come to Austria for the first time what the value system is. So we're not talking the media then said, oh, well, is this lederhosen and dumplings? It's no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about basic rights such as freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of dress code, freedom of, or equality or solidarity, things like that. So very let's say high meta level values. Long story short, I realized it's amazing what we're doing, but we're not reaching enough people in the right way. So when we look at user centricity and customer orientation, we should be reaching them better, and we could be. So I spoke to my boss about whether we can't change it a little bit. My idea back then was to have 2-minute video tutorials on YouTube, just because I realized, doing these trainings, that a lot of the refugees, or actually most refugees who were in the asylum camps, they were just waiting all day, because waiting for a German course, waiting for their asylum papers to come in, etc. So just a lot of waiting, and that's frustrating for any human being out there.
There's nothing worse.
Exactly. So I figured, they're already on YouTube because they need to spend their time somehow. So why don't we just, produce what we have, these 8-hour courses, all the content, why don't we make that in short clips so that people can actually already learn this and watch this while waiting. To make the waiting more effective and efficient.
Makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
Now that you say it.
So, my boss was very stoked about the idea. but he was not stoked of doing it.
Okay.
So he was like, actually, that's not our focus. We're not doing that now. Focus are these courses. I was like, okay, that's really sad. Can I do this on my own? He's like, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Oh,
so then I started doing that on my own. Made a few videos on, let's say, the culturally most challenging situations for refugees coming to Austria. Did that, produced, I think altogether we produced 3 videos. And I realized, first of all, I'm not good at doing this. I'm not good at producing videos. I can write the script and everything. That's no problem. But like the actual video itself, I'm not good at it. And so we're always going to have a bottleneck of somebody producing the videos. And secondly, okay, great. Now we've got these videos, but how do we get that out to the people? Like, how do we distribute that? Because if you, like, YouTube has so many videos out there. So, and then in the end, like we produced this, and I actually got like so many volunteers come on board, just colleagues of mine and people from my courses who were like, hey, I really want to do this. It's amazing. A Syrian guy who was a video recorder, he produced videos. It's fantastic. But in the end, I realized, okay, this is, again, we're not making the impact that we could be. So it was really funny. I was driving home with my brother and like driving from my parents' house to my house, which is a 12-minute journey in Vienna. And I was, like, he's like, oh, so how's life? How's it going? I was like, well, really frustrated because I don't know how to get these videos out there. And he's like, well, there must be some kind of like, let's say, one door, one office, one platform, one whatever, where refugees come or immigrants come and say, hi, I'm new here. What do I need to look at? Like, how do I like integrate in Austria? How do I orientate myself? I'm like, no, that doesn't exist. That's the huge problem. And he's like, I don't get it. How is that possible? It doesn't exist. I'm like, I don't know. It's really frustrating. Welcome to my life. And he's like, yeah, but why don't you just do it yourself? I'm like, it's a good point. Well, why don't I? Well, how would you do it? He's like, I don't know, just create a platform, like a website or something. I'm like, okay, and what would you call it? He's like, well, I don't know. I'm refugee. I'm like, okay, I'll think about it. So I left the car, like 12 minutes, left the car, went up to my apartment, went online, looked at domain names. So I'm refugee.at is still available. Bought it, and I called them up. I'm like, we're doing this. I was like, okay, good. And that's how it started.
That's incredible.
And then I think it took us, let's say, I think it like 3 or 4 months, and it was live. Up and running. Another month, and I put all the content in, and then another, it was February, and then another 3 months for it to be finished as it can be, but actually have a translation. So we translate it into Arabic, Farsi, and English. Because back then, you could use everything. You could use Google Translate, obviously, but back then Google Translate was not good enough yet. And also, if you speak to somebody coming from the Arabic world, Arabic is not Arabic. There's so many nuances that you have to watch out for. And in order for a website to get the trust from its users, it has to seem authentic. Yeah,
of course.
And Google Translate did not offer that option. So that's the impact I was trying to make.
It feels like you succeeded.
Not as much as I, of course, would hope for, but I try my best, or I tried my best, So
you're getting more to see the effects as well as you were missing before?
The effect of people knowing what to do in Austria? Or,
I mean, before you said that one of the things you were missing was to see like the long-term effects, sort of.
That kind of effect. That's a very good question. No.
Maybe it's too early.
What I do get is feedback. So from users saying, because we're using your website, I don't know, I met this and this person and he showed me Austria, or I found my first Austrian friend, or hey, I found a German course, or this girl the other day said that because of our website, she realized for the first time that she can actually do her, I don't know what you call it in Sweden, but her A-levels or her Matura, Abitur, whatever you call it. So finish her school education for free in Austria, and where to actually go and stuff. So yes, these are the things that I know of. do I know like large impact? Have we changed our society? And have we like dug up the potential that we have? No, I've not been able to.
No, maybe.
I have to wait for that.
Yeah.
I have to wait for that.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can only really see in hindsight.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, yeah, definitely.
But it feels like doing the right thing.
It feels like doing the right thing. Yeah, I'm still surprised that we're the only ones. Like, I don't get it. It's just
that's outrageous.
It really is outrageous. We've had a look at. So in 2017, I was doing this as, let's say, part-time. I always continued my job in order to at least earn some money. Yeah. But and also, obviously, through the courses, I got the users and I got user feedback constantly. Yeah. So that was super important to me. But now I'm doing it. I went back into the Agile world in 2018, beginning of 2018. Since then, I've been doing this more or less as a hobby on the side because I think it's super important. And so in 2017, when I was doing this more or less professionally, of course, we've researched a lot and we were trying to get in touch with a lot of other organizations across Europe mostly who were doing something similar. We couldn't find any. Like, there was one single organization or platform in Germany who were doing a similar thing. So like giving orientation, answering questions online. But they were shut down. So they were shut down simply before funding reasons. So they were funded by a big, what's it called? Like a private donor. And in the end, because the refugee numbers were going down in 2018, they were actually shut down because there was not enough need for it. Yeah, and apart from that, we didn't see a single one. And what was really interesting to us actually was that last year, 2018, we were contacted by someone from the White House who was traveling around Europe and trying to, let's say, get ideas for digital services for migrants. So not necessarily refugees, but migrants generally. And we met up with him and, had a 1-hour conversation. And in the end, I was like, okay, so could you please give us an insight into what you've learned? Because, I haven't had the time or the money to go across Europe and to, meet up with all these amazing people. Could you share your know-how and how we could learn from that? And he had just looked at me and he's like, actually, I can't. Because there's seriously not a single person out there doing what you guys are doing. It is so absolutely unique that you actually need to just continue doing what you're doing because otherwise there's nobody else.
Yeah, it's so strange. But why is that?
I think for several reasons. Firstly, the funding. Most of the organizations in that sector, in the integration area, migration area, whichever, are governmentally funded, and the government has a lot of funding for these projects. However, the government is slow. Yeah. And so what they are funding are not the things that the users need, but they are funding what a few years later they discovered that would have been needed back then. Yeah. So most of the organizations in that sector, they follow the funding and not the user needs. That's the main difference between for-profit and non-profit. And that's where we were completely different. We were like, okay, well, of course we had a look at all the funding options out there. And we applied for some funding options as well. However, the way it worked in Austria, at least, is, for example, there would be a government fund for helping refugees to find work or helping refugees to find apartments, living conditions, or helping refugees to learn German. We were doing all these things, but we weren't specifically doing those. We were simply a platform that would link you or guide you through that journey towards finding a job. But in the end, we weren't the ones who were finding a job. We were just, paving the way. Yeah. And because of that, we were never in line for the funding. Yeah. So that's the one case. So there's no funding for things that the users really need at this point. That's that's really the main reason.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the big explanation
Yeah.
in many places, I guess. Because there's always someone more specific who can write a better application for the same funding.
Yeah, and the second thing is, maybe that's also interesting, is the way the funding works. So on the one hand, we've got the big government fundings for let's say integration programs or whatever, or social programs. On the other hand, we've got digital funding in Austria, which for startups, for digital ideas, etc. So these are different kind of let's call it attitudes or funding ways. For the digital ones, again, the way these work are, firstly, you have to make sure that you have a very good business case, which, of course, in my case, yes, we could work with affiliate marketing, etc. But were we going to make ourselves or other people rich? No, that was not the point of it.
No, exactly.
No, we were just filling a need. We were filling a gap in the market that was super, super, super important for our society.
Yeah, it's infrastructure building.
Exactly. And secondly, what they want, these kind of funding agencies is a very well laid out business plan. Now, and you're not allowed to start building anything until you have funding. So these processes, they take a long time.
Yeah.
They take at least months.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know friends that they got the funding a year later. Now, if we would have waited that long, first of all, get the business case going, etc., think about it, write it down, etc., etc. We know in the Agile world what that actually, how realistic that is, and how much how much value this business plan actually adds. And then on the other hand, you've got the fact that I would have had to wait with what we're doing, because the second that you start programming something, then it doesn't count for the funding anymore. So we couldn't really get those either, obviously. So we kind of fell through everything, and I think, to round that off, that's the main reason why we're at least the only one that I know of who are doing this.
Yeah. That's strange. So it's like everything's set up in the wrong way here. It's sort of working against.
It's a new situation, and we don't know how to deal with these things yet.
No. And then next time, governments will react in a way that would have been appropriate now, perhaps.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, there's hoping and wishing.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I don't know.
No.
Yeah. Our big hope, that was our big wish, was that the website, we started as a website now I call it like a platform more or less, because we have an app, we have a website, we have social media channels, so we're on Instagram, Facebook. Those are the ones, Oh, and YouTube, of course. And more or less active in each of these. So what our big hope was for the government to say, hey, it's awesome what you've done here.
Yeah.
Can we buy that off you?
Yeah.
Or can we just have it? Honestly, in the end, if the government would have said, look, this is how we continue it, for example. We're a team of volunteers. So, and some of my volunteers, they're looking for real jobs,
of course.
Paid jobs. So if the government would have said, hey, look, we're taking the platform off you, and we'd like 2 of you to continue this as full-time employees, I would have said, thank you, please, yes, go ahead, here you have it.
This is where it should go.
That would have been the main goal. And so we had lots of conversations with the government. Then we had a government change.
That happens too.
That happens sometimes. Then that kind of fell through. So in the end, at the moment, it's still ours. We're still working on it as volunteers. We're still not making money off it. And it's still out there. It's still being used. It's still making an impact.
Yeah, exactly. So how many people roughly have been involved in creating it, building it, and maintaining?
It's a difficult question to answer. So we've had, as I said before, we're all volunteers. So it was me and my brother who started it. And then we had, of course, in the beginning, what do? You ask your friends.
Yeah, of course.
And your colleagues, because I was working for the government. And of course, I was working with a lot of translators. And so these translators helped me out with the platform. So that was fantastic. Very few of them stayed, which is really interesting. they all thought it's a great course, but not for them in the long run. And so in the end, not in the end, but after a few months, I actually sent out a job application, a job opening, on a few websites for like NGO jobs or nonprofit jobs. And then quite a few people applied. Like when I say a few people, I'm talking about 160 emails within the first 4 days, I think.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
But then I realized, it's a different sector, and you have to be looking at potential volunteers or employees or whatever you want to call it, differently. So of those 160 people, in the end, I don't know, I interviewed 3 because I had a little process before that. And I realized only 3 were, I could really consider. This was the first time actually doing that. So from that, Katja, one of the people I interviewed, she's still on. She's still doing this. This is now two years and a quarter later. So she's still on. And apart from that, I mean, we have people came and left again, but we've been more or less stable team of always around 7 or 8 people. We've got a network of people that I can, call and say, hey, could you please help me with this? Of probably 30 plus people. And in terms of the core, so I kind of divided up into 3 aspects. So we've got the core team, we've got the team of volunteers, and the network. And the core team is Katja, for example, the first person applying. And Bilal, so Katja does the whole social media. Bilal, I met him at a Christmas party, so just randomly. He developed the app and still working on that. And and I'm doing, let's say, everything else. So just like making sure it's being kept together and bringing in new ideas. I mean, everyone does that, but just kind of
being the glue. So,
being the glue. Thank you. Yeah, exactly that. So that's us 3 as the core. Yeah.
And then there's the 30 and then there's
exactly.
the others.
So I mean, if you're in a non-profit sector, if you're not paying people, it's a different field. At the same time, we're in an intercultural field. So it's like we have people from all different cultures. It's super fascinating. And obviously that's also a language topic,
of course.
Lots of, I don't want to say misunderstandings, but it's more difficult to communicate.
Nuance is lost.
Exactly. Different expectations due to cultural background. So it's super fascinating. I could go on for hours about this.
Of course.
And I mean, the topic of volunteers itself is like it's a huge topic. I didn't know that beforehand, but now I do. There's conferences about in Vienna alone. There's so many conferences about how to work with volunteers, how to deal with volunteers, how to keep them on, how to get rid of them again if you're not, doing what they're doing, etc. So it's like the sector of volunteers is a field of studying in itself.
Is that something other open source projects should look into? Should they be going to those conferences, perhaps? Or is it a different kind of volunteer?
It's a different kind of volunteer because I think it's all about what is your motivation. And volunteering in Austria is a very governmentally regulated sector. So there's real legal laws around it. So I don't know. Maybe.
No. I have no idea how it works in Sweden, so I don't know about anything. It's so exciting to think that there are interesting ways of making more of an impact with sort of thinking from the development IT world.
Well, if more people would think of if more people would explicitly use agile methods and the agile mindset in a sector outside of the for-profit world, I absolutely believe that this world would be different. Absolutely. Because if you think about it, I mean, what do we do in the agile world? We have an absolute user centricity. Not just customer orientation, but we realize that the customer is not always the user. And that's exactly what I said earlier. if I'm a non-profit organization, I focus on the customer. Where is the money coming from, which is the government.
Yeah.
But the government, the customer, in this way, doesn't really know what the user itself needs.
No.
And to make that differentiation is a very agile approach. If you think about the whole, let's say, the just do it attitude, so there's an impediment or there's something, not working right. Yeah, let's just fix that.
Yeah.
And if it's not working, we'll have a look at it later anyway, because in latest, let's say 2 weeks or however long the sprint is, we'll have a reflection on whether it's bringing an impact or a value, and whether we as a team are doing this well.
Yeah.
So this whole approach of, well, we can't really fail. If we do fail, it's not going to be a big problem because then we fix it again in 2 weeks latest. Yeah. So this attitude is worth so much, especially in a sector that has no money, where it's even more important to bring an impact in the least amount of time and least amount of energy and efforts put in. So I it's fascinating how you can interlink those two sectors of agility and non-profit.
Yeah. Have you heard of other people doing sort of crossovers like this?
So yes. So I know there's a few people out there in the Agile world. Don't ask me their names now, but I know one person, for example, who saved a hospital in Indonesia. He was here at Øredev a few years ago.
Oh, cool.
Then I know a few people in the US who are doing things. But actually, if you look at the startup scene, there's a big, like in Austria at least, there's quite a big actually startup scene in the non-profit area, especially during the refugee crisis. A lot of startups started, and they're using. I mean, what is a startup doing? A startup is using agile methods and agile mindset without calling it that, because it makes most sense. So yes, there are quite a few out there, and the ones that I know of that are still out there that still survive, let's say the government funding cuts and there being fewer refugees, etc., etc. They're really they definitely took a lean startup approach. So there's in Austria, for example, there's one of the organizations who's doing who started off by realizing there's too few developers in Austria, in Europe generally, but let's say in Austria. Yeah. And there's a lot of refugees needing jobs. So why don't we, link those two? It would make sense, right? Makes sense, So he started off with that Refugees Code, it was called. And then he realized, okay, actually, in order to get some funding, et cetera, get more users, get more people participating, we need to change course. We need to pivot, very lean startup-y. And now he's doing it he's working together with the government, and he's training people generally who don't have a job to become a developer. So he's kind of changed from the whole refugee topic to generally people in Austria. So now it's called the New Austrian Coding School or something like that. Similar with another startup, which is called MTOP, who are doing, so it's called More Than One Perspective. So it's to bring refugee academics who should really have a job because they have something that the country of Austria needs. To kind of bring them through a program where they learn how to apply in Austria, how to work in Austria, because there is a cultural difference.
Of course.
And to train them in a way, and then to link them to organizations. So they bring in the organizations, the companies who are looking for employees, and then they bring in refugees who have an academic background, and link those two. And so they're still going. So I mean, absolutely agile mindset, absolutely agile methods. But are they calling it that? No.
Just brings the wrong attention or something.
I don't even think they're aware of it.
No, probably not. No. That's true.
I think they're just doing what makes most sense. And it's honestly I hadn't noticed that I was doing agile. I was using my agile mindset, my agile methods until let's say half a year ago or something, when I was actually reflecting on this. Okay, we did do that, didn't we? I just did what made most sense. And coming from an agile background,
that's what you do.
Exactly.
And you try to improve it.
Exactly. So really,
It's such an interesting journey and story. We'll link to your session, of course, as well, so people can watch that it's still in the future as we're recording. Is there anywhere else people should go to, like, if they want to find out more information when they listen to this?
Yes, of course. We live off people knowing about us. If people could, of course, follow us, like us, send us to people that they know that should hear of us. So we used to be called I Am Refugee, but then we realized actually that's not, for our users, that's not the best name of the website or of the app even. And we changed it to the 3 German words that you learn first when you come to Austria, or actually 4, which is was, wie, warum in Österreich, which means what, how, and why in Austria, because these are the questions that we answer when you come to our website. And the second reason for that is because of the change in name. Actually, we're a platform for integration. Like, why should only refugees integrate? Why would it make sense only for them? We've got 1.6 million immigrants in Austria. Wow. Like, in comparison to 8.7, that's a lot. That's a lot. So it's a much bigger user group. And if you rename the website to that, then of course the user group changes. Yeah, of course. And so so now we're called Was, wie, warum in Österreich, or in short wawiwa.at. So if you just link us or send us around, or if even like what I've never understood is anyone can have our code, anyone can use whatever we have and reproduce it in their country. Yeah. Please go ahead. Exactly. Like, there's no secrets. There's no, I don't know. We're not making money off it. We're not, this is purely for having an impact and a positive impact for everyone. Like people coming in and people living here already. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. Please fork the project. Yeah, exactly. Everyone can gain. Exactly that. Yeah. I mean, biggest impact possible. Peace and happiness in a society. Yeah. It's an okay goal, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Everyone can have the cake and eat it too. Thank you so much, Stephanie. This was super interesting. Thanks.
Let me put it this way, Mr. Raymer. The 9000 series is the most reliable computer ever made. No 9000 computer has ever made a mistake or distorted information. We are all, by any practical definition of the words, foolproof and incapable of error.